Welcome back. In this lecture, where we will try to understand multicultural conception of rights. So, to begin with multicultural conception of right, we have to understand what is multiculturalism is first. What is multiculturalism? So, etymological analysis. We'll start with etymological analysis. Multicultural, multicultural. Multiple cultures exist within a society. Right? Multiple cultures exist within a society. This is multiculturalism. New York, if I pull up demography of New York, 30% are whites, nearly 30% are Italians, 10 to 20% are Hindus and all those blacks, blacks from nearly 30 to 40%, and rest are also there. Jews are also there. Then we see presence of Chinese and all people all around the world. You will find them in New York. So New York as a city is quite multicultural because there is presence of multiculture. There is presence of multiple cultures within New York, right? This is multiculturalism. This is multicultural presence within a society. What multiculturalism means, right? I explained what is multicultural. That multiple cultures exist within a society. What is multiculturalism, right? When I suffix ism to any word, it is basically saying that I am talking about an ideology. So multiculturalism is a political philosophy. It is an ideology which guides public policy, keeping in mind keeping in mind concerns of minorities. Concerns of minorities. So what is multiculturalism? Multiculturalism is it is essentially political philosophy, which guides public policy, keeping in mind concerns of minorities. Right? What is essential feature of minorities within a multicultural society? They play politics of identity. What is politics of identity with respect to minorities? Uh, in Bangladesh, Hindus are minorities. So Hindus in Bangladesh will support a political party which is going to be least against it. So they will gather together within a particular umbrella identity, and they will try to address social exclusion. They will try to address social exclusion. Minorities of Bangladesh, that is Hindus, will play politics of identity, that their politics their politics is based on the identity they have. Why they do so? Because they want to address social exclusion within Bangladeshi society, right? Within Bangladeshi society. This politics of identity or multiculturalism, right? With respect to politics of identity or multiculturalism as well, there are multiple criticisms. People like Brian Berry, right? Remember this when you are going to write criticisms of criticisms of multiculturalism as well. People like Brian Berry say politics of identity leads to more marginalization. Brian Berry and Brian Berry suggests politics of identity should be discarded and we should go forward with politics of development. Brian Berry says this, whereby he says that politics of identity leads to more marginalization, more socio-economic marginalization. What we should go for is politics of development. Then feminists say feminists say that cultures give keep women subordinate. They cultures give substandard status to women. So feminists will reject all politics of identities except politics of gender. Politics of gender. So this is the idea behind multiculturalism and politics of identity. Feminists criticize politics of identity, accept politics of gender, and say that multiculturalism is bad for women. Why multiculturalism is bad for women, we'll try to understand in better detail when we understand multiculturalism in totality. But to start with, what is multiculturalism? It is it is acceptance that within a society multiple culture exist. When you see cultures all around the world, Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Wahhabism, any type of culture is there. All these type of culture keep women subordinate, right? I am speaking language of feminist. I don't support this views. I am speaking language of feminist. Feminists say any type of culture will keep women subordinate. That is why acceptance of culture is bad for women, and we should go for liberalism because liberalism respects autonomy of self of an individual. Multiculturalism is bad because every culture keeps women subordinate. That is why radical feminist, liberal radical feminists like Susan Moller Okin suggest we should go for liberalism, support autonomy of self. That is the idea behind politics of identity and multicultural conception of rights. What is multicultural? That is within a society multiple cultures exist. What is multiculturalism, right? What is multicultural and what is multiculturalism, right? There is a slight difference. With that difference is that multiculturalism is a political philosophy which suggests and which guides public policy keeping in mind interest of minorities. What these minorities do to effect multicultural public policy as is that they will play politics of identity. They will form in group homogeneity. In group homogeneity. When you study society, you will understand what I mean by in group homogeneity. They will form a particular group of themselves. So minorities play politics of identity. They have in group homogeneity and they have in group homogeneity to address social inclusion, social exclusion. Just like in Bangladesh, Hindu play politics of identity. They form a group and they will support one of the two political parties on the basis of which party is going to terrorize them both, oppress them less, right? Which party is going to terrorize or oppress them less. Against this politics of identity, liberals like Brian Ray says that politics of identity leads to more marginalization. That is why we should go for politics of development. And feminists say that Politics of identity is bad except politics of gender because cultures all around the world keep women subordinate and cultures all around the world keep women secondary. That is why multiculturalism is bad and we should go for liberalism which supports autonomy of self. This idea was supported by Susan Muller. Okay, right. So this is multiculturalism and this is the basic idea behind it. Now, multiculturalism as a thought or as a philosophy was given by scholar Will Kimlicka. Will Kimlicka. Will Kimlicka in his book Multicultural Citizenship. Multicultural Citizenship or of 1995. Right. What his attempt in this book, what he's basically trying to do is he wants to show that multiculturalism is natural extension of liberalism, and he wants to show that multiculturalism and liberalism are are compatible to each other. What is what is what is at substantive heart of liberalism according to Isaiah Berlin? What is substantive heart of liberalism according to Isaiah Berlin? It is toleration, right? What is multiculturalism? It is presence of multiple culture. It is a political philosophy which accepts and guides public policy, keeping in mind concerns of minorities. So you can connect it like this, right? I will make a small diagram. So this is multiculturalism. This is multiculturalism. This is liberalism. Liberalism connects to multiculturalism through idea of toleration. Because liberalism is tolerant, multicultural societies, multiculturalism can exist within liberalism, right? This is philosophical basis of it. Will Kimlicka gives practical basis of of why liberalism and multiculturalism are compatible and naturally aligned to each other, and he starts by giving reasons for emergence of multiculturalism. First reason that Kimlicka gives is globalization. First reason that Kimlicka gives is globalization. What is globalization? As we have understood in sovereignty, it is compression of time and space. It is deterritorialization. It is increased level of interaction. So with globalization, has increased. Migration from India has increased to, let's say, Europe, let's say America, let's say Canada. So with globalization, migration has increased. So you see Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Japanese, Chinese, Russians, Italians, all these kinds of people in, let's say, America. Why this happened? Because of globalization. So with globalization, you see migration has increased. Then, then why multiculturalism emerged First reason he gives is globalization. Second reason he gives is securitization of ethnicity. Securitization of ethnicity. Securitization is a very evasive concept of political science. It is not very simple to understand. What is securitization? What is securitization? Securitization is uh, Trump saying Trump saying that Muslims are bad. Trump says this Muslims are bad. Muslims are bad. Or securitization is Trump saying, let's say, Momdani, Zohran Momdani is jihadi. All this Trump says. What Trump is trying to do, what Trump is trying to do is get his vote bank to think that, to think that Muslims are bad and Zohran Momdani is a jihadi. But this is what Trump is saying to make people think that, if you if you believe if you believe and make friends with Muslims, if and he says that Zoran Mamdani is bad. He basically what he wants to say that if you are going to vote Zoran Mamdani, you are going to get Sharia laws and all those things. But it is not simply true. What Trump is trying to do basically is trying to grow mistrust, right? He's trying to grow mistrust. And what he's trying to do within white nationalist movement, within white nationalization movement, Christian nationalism, what he wants to do is he wants to grow politics of identity, right? He wants all Christian white nationalist, he wants to think that all Christian white nationalists are should stick together. They should have single identity, they should have single group, and they should show mistrust toward Muslims. They should show distrust toward Zohran Mamdani. Right? Securitization is doing something like this. Securitization is saying that terrorism is the biggest terrorism is the biggest threat that humanity faces today. But when you see the amount of deaths that's caused by terrorism and amounts of death caused by, let's say, sugar, let's say diabetes, let's say heart attack. So people die more out of diabetes and heart attack than by terrorism. So which is bigger threat, terrorism or heart attacks? It is heart attacks, but we are made to believe that terrorism is a bigger threat. Terrorism is a bigger threat. Securitization is basically growing mistrust and and strengthen or grow politics of identity. Securitization of ethnicity, that you are trying to show that a particular ethnicity is bad for you, particular ethnic people, particular culture is bad for you, right? It grows mistrust and it strengthens politics of identity. Securitization of ethnicity, you are trying to make believe a set of people that a particular ethnicity is bad for you. That is securitization of ethnicity. Then the third reason why multiculturalism emerged. We are trying to understand emergence of multiculturalism, in which we first understood Globalization as a reason. Then we are trying to understand securitization of ethnicity. The third reason is marginalization of minorities and their social exclusion is another reason why multiculturalism exists. Marginalization of minorities and their social exclusion. If you marginalize minorities and you socially exclude them, naturally, naturally, they will stick together, right? They will stick together. Example is from India. I will cite a government report by Sachar committee. Sachar committee observed that Muslims in India are most marginalized. Muslims in India are most marginalized. They are marginalized. They are socially excluded. So what they will do, that they will band together. They will stick together. When they stick together, when they put the politics of identity, there is emergence of multiculturalism. The fourth reason that Will Kimlicka gives is democracy or emergence of democracy. He says democracy is the reason because only in democracy there is there is freedom of speech, religion, or culture. Right. Democracy is another reason why emerged. Multiculturalism emerged. Right. These are the reasons so as to why multiculturalism emerged. First is globalization, then securitization of ethnicity, then marginalization of minorities and their social exclusion, then democracy. Because only in democracy there is freedom of speech and expression, religion, and culture. Right? Then, then we have to understand influences on Kimlicka. Influences on Kimlicka. The first influence on Kimlicka is John Rawls. John Rawls of his second book, Political Liberalism, not of his first book, Theory of Justice, of second book, Political Liberalism. He gives ideas like overlapping consensus. John Rawls gives ideas like comprehensive doctrine. He gives ideas like burdens of judgment. What these ideas basically mean, right? And he and in totality, he gives idea of reasonable pluralism. What is reasonable pluralism? What is reasonable pluralism? It is basically saying that within your particular sphere of justice, you can decide your own principle of justice. Within a particular sphere, there can be, within a particular society and within a particular sphere, there can be a particular idea of justice, there can be a particular principle of justice. He says overlapping consensus can be there, that people of different comprehensive doctrines can 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 say that can say that we accept a particular a particular principle as a common minimum program. He says he accepts comprehensive doctrines can be different, and he says that people of different comprehensive doctrines can form overlapping consensus, and until overarching consensus cannot be formed, he says people have to accept and live with burdens of judgment. So In his theory or in his book of political liberalism, he accepts multiculturalism because he accepts there can be different comprehensive doctrines. He accepts that there can be different principle of justice in different spheres of justice in different societies. So John Rawls is his first first influence. Understanding John Rawls, his idea of reasonable pluralism becomes very important. Then second influence is Dworkin. Second influence is Dworkin. What Dworkin says, what Dworkin says, Dworkin says that equality is equal concern. What equality is not is what equality is not. It is not absolute equality. Equality is equal concern, right? And by this extension, we can say that being born a minority is brute luck because being born a minority is brute luck. It has to be compensated. What is brute luck? With accident of birth. It is not your fault that you are born a minority. So minority being born in a minority is brute luck. So you have to be compensated. What is compensation? Compensation is very small that respect a person and his culture. This is compensation for brute luck of being born in a minority. Being born in a minority, right? The third, the third influence on Bill Kemlica was Iris Marion Young and her idea of differentiated citizenship. Differentiated citizenship. Differentiated citizenship. What is differentiated citizenship? What is differentiated citizenship? It basically means that you are not just a citizen of a nation, right? You are not autonomous self. You are not autonomous self. You are not atomistic. You are not atomistic individual, right? And she says that if I view as atomistic individual and I say that citizenship is universal. What universal citizenship basically means that you are just citizen of nation. You don't belong to any culture. You are an autonomous self. You are a person within. You are just a person without any cultural background, and it is the universal conception of citizenship whereby you are just a citizen of a nation. Universal conception of citizenship is like color blindness. You are just an individual. What Marian Young says, what Marian Young basically says that you are you in political life, you in political sphere should not be seen as atomistic individuals, but as but as members of community or ethnic group. You in political sphere should not be seen as atomistic individuals but as members of community or ethnic group. What it basically mean that, let's suppose I have group of 18 persons, 10 persons, or 10 or 12 persons, right? So I have group of 8. I have group of 18 persons. If I see these 18 persons as individuals, then I will see them like this. These are 18 individual person for me, and I will see them as individual person in political sphere. But if I say these green ones belong to one community and these green ones are citizens of a particular community and of a nation as well. Differentiated citizenship means this, that you are a citizen of particular community and of nation as well. So these three greens belong to one community, then blues belong to one community, and reds belong to one community. They are citizens of these communities and nations as well. You are not seen as individuals. You are not seen as individual. You are not seen as individual citizens, but you are seen as citizens of your particular community. That is the idea of differentiated citizenship, right? Kimlicka, influenced by Rawls' reasonable pluralism, that with different societies there can be different conception of justice. Then influenced by Dworkin, that being born in minority is a brute luck which need to be compensated with respect to the respective person and his culture. Then Iris Miriam Young says that in his inner concept of differentiated citizenship, you are not just a citizen of a nation, right? You are not an individual. You are not an individual. You are not an individual which belong to a particular nation only. You are seen as a member of your particular community, a citizen of your particular community and nation as well. So you are seen as citizen of your particular community and nation as well. That is differentiated citizenship. Based on all three principles of reasonable pluralism, brute luck, and differentiated citizenship, will Kimlicka give theory of multicultural citizenship. Will Kimlicka give theory of multicultural citizenship? What is multicultural citizenship? Based on it is based on Iris Marion Young's differentiated citizenship, whereby you are not only citizen of particular nation, you are also a citizen of your particular community, and basis of this idea, he gives his theory of multicultural citizenship, and he suggests three sets of rights. First, I have to write based on Iris Marion Young's differentiated citizenship. And he gives three sets of rights to minorities. Three sets of rights to minorities. First set of right is self-governance rights. Self-governance rights. What is self-governance rights? What is self-governance rights? Self-governance rights basically mean that when a minority is geographically isolated to a particular area, right? Let's assume minority is geographically or socially concentrated within not socially. Geography is minority is geographically concentrated within a particular area, right? Minority is geographically concentrated. Self-governance rights will give rights to such minorities which are geographically concentrated. For example, French minority concentration in Quebec of Canada. Quebec, Canada. So, French in Quebec have special governance rights to themselves. Their their language of administration is French. Their administration is different. Everything in Quebec is different. Their education system is different. So they have special governance rights because minority is concentrated within a special geographical area. Before 2019, before 2019, Kashmir, Kashmir under Article 370 had special governance rights. They had their separate constitution. They had their separate flag. There was a clause in constitution whereby a person from mainland who is not a Kashmiri cannot buy land in Kashmir. Cannot buy land in Kashmir. So, so idea is if minority is geographically concentrated, we will give them particular self-governance rights. Self-governance rights. This is the first idea of self-governance rights. The second idea of Kimlicka's theory of multicultural citizenship is special representation rights. Special representation rights. What is special representation rights? What is special representation rights? Let's assume there is a parliament, and this parliament has first past the post method, and only 10% of minorities are present in a particular country. So by first past the post method, because they are only 10%, there is no way they will have representation in parliament, right? They will have representation in parliament. So if you remember, there were two seats. There were two seats in Lok Sabha which were reserved for Anglo-Indians, right? Anglo-Indians were minority in India. They were given special representation rights. They were given special representation right in Indian Parliament, whereby they had two seats in Lok Sabha, in in lower house, right? So what special representation rights basically mean that democracy should protect and should give voice to minorities, my voice to minorities, if they cannot get elected in parliament. That is the idea behind special representation rights. That is the idea behind special representation rights. Where we will understand aren't Lichbard's idea of consociational democracy in democracy. I will make a interlinkage there, right? I will make you understand what is consociational democracy in theory of democracy, and I will make an interlinkage there. The third principle of Kimlicka's multicultural citizenship is polyethnic rights. Polyethnic rights, right? What he basically wants to say that there should be special cultural rights special cultural rights to minorities for preservation of culture. But he excludes number one LGBTQ, he excludes immigrants and grants polyethnic rights only to national minorities. National minorities. What does it mean? Why he does not give polyethnic rights or special cultural rights to immigrants? Because he says that immigrants have have left their country and came to a particular country. It was by their choice. That is why they should uh, get absorbed in local culture. But with national minorities, he said that there should be polyethnic right given to them. So Indians who migrated to USA should not be given special cultural rights. But but native Indians, right? Red Indians should have polyethnic rights to preserve their culture. That is the basic idea behind polyethnic rights. That immigrants should not be given polyethnic rights for preservation of culture, but national minorities, native minorities like Red Indians in America should be given special cultural rights. Right? He excludes even refugees. He excludes even refugees because he says that refugees, even though have not come in a particular country by choice, but it is not prerogative of hosting country to give them cultural rights. It is prerogative of their home country, and there should be international pressure on their home country to grant them their rights. That is the idea of multicultural citizenship as explained by Will Kimlicka. He gives three rights: self-governance rights to a geographically concentrated minority, example Quebec region of Canada. Then special representation right in legislature. There should be seats reserved for a particular minority which cannot get elected to legislature otherwise. Then polyethnic rights. He suggests national minorities should give rights to preserve their particular culture, but such rights should not be extended to LGBTQ minorities by their choice. National minorities should be given polyethnic rights, and he excludes even refugees because he says that it is not incumbent, it is not work of the hosting country. Right? Let's say African refugees goes to Europe. It is not work of Europeans to give them their cultural rights, but he suggests that rest of the world should convince the African countries uh, which they refused from, which they got away from, and international community should ask those countries to give them their rights. Right? This is the idea of multicultural citizenship. This is the idea of multicultural citizenship. Then, in this context of multicultural citizenship, he gives liberal theory of multiculturalism. He gives liberal theory of multiculturalism. What is liberal theory of multiculturalism? Right? What is liberal theory of multiculturalism? There are two things: liberalism and multiculturalism. There are two things: liberalism and multiculturalism. So, what Kimlicka basically wants to say by multiculturalism, he will say that give special cultural rights, right? Special cultural rights are absolutely needed to be given, but he is giving liberal theory. By liberal theory, he will say that fundamental liberal values need to be intact, right? So, liberalism for him is a necessary condition. It is a necessary condition, and multiculturalism is a sufficient condition. What does this mean? This means this means basically what it means that if you are a multicultural group of people within a liberal society, what what right of you will be preserved first? It will be individualism. Individualism will be preserved first. Then what will be preserved? Then your special cultural rights will be preserved. What it basically means that what it basically means that liberal theory of multiculturalism we are studying. So liberal principles will take priority over multicultural or special cultural rights. So what he basically says that, let's say sharia law sharia law is applicable in a liberal society, but will Kimlicka say that only such Sharia law will be applicable which align with individualism, right? So, if Sharia law says that a woman cannot get out of her house alone without her protectors, that is male, either son, brother, or father or husband, or they can go outside the home with the groups. This this cultural right, this special cultural right cannot be applied in multicultural in liberal societies whereby individualism will take precedence. So there is this very big debate that is going on in France, Burkini debate. It had Burkini debate. It had a big debate which was going on. So France is a liberal society, but you can also say that it is a multicultural society as well, which accepts and give its normal citizen their rights. France is liberal societies as well as multicultural society. So what France basically does that it accepts that burkini or burqa can be can be wore in public, right? But it is liberal, so it does not impose that it has to wear in public spaces, right? I don't remember totally, but we can understand this by Karnataka case study. I think will better fit here. So India is a multicultural society, and it is a liberal society as well. India is both multicultural and liberal. So in Karnataka there was this government order or government GR that was taken out, which said in school you cannot use or you cannot wear burqa, right? Without outside school you can wear burqa. So Muslim societies got agitated that multicultural right of wearing burqa is being taken away. But India is a liberal society. I am just using this as case study. But India is a liberal society, and state suggests that there should not be use of culture within a liberal public space, right? Even in France, they have banned burkini. I remember now they have banned burkini at all. Nobody can wear burkini, right? They accept they are multicultural, but the liberal element of that society take precedence, and they have banned burkini altogether, right? So that is the idea. What is the idea behind liberal theory of multiculturalism? Is basically saying that liberal principle will take precedence over special cultural rights. Your special cultural rights cannot take priority over fundamentals of liberalism, that are principles like individualism, toleration, all that. So liberal principle will take precedence over multicultural principles, whereby your right to exercise your religious cultural rights are not as important as liberal rights of individualism. That is the basic idea, right? In this context, Kimlicka suggests two sets of protection. Two sets of protection. First set of protection is external. External. External set of protection is from external things. And second set of protection is internal. Internal set of protection is is within within a community. Within a community. I will explain this. Right? External set of protection is like there are two communities, community A and community B. If community A is oppressing community B, state will give protection to community B. Right? Now within community B, there are males, there are females. Males are dominating or oppressing women, so state will give protection to women. So if outside community oppression is happening, community A is oppressing community B, state will give protection to community B. Within community B, if male are oppressing women, then state will give protection to women. External protection, internal protection. Right? With respect to internal protection, there are two cases from Supreme Court. It is Sabrimala judgment of 2019 and triple talaq judgment, right, as well. So this was multicultural citizenship and liberal theory of multiculturalism, which will give precedence of liberal ideas than multicultural ideas. Liberal ideas will take more importance than multicultural idea, right? Then we have to see criticism as well. Criticism of multiculturalism of Kimlicka. First criticism was given by Bhikkhu Parekh. Bhikkhu Parekh, he was a post-colonial scholar and he wrote this book, Rethinking Multiculturalism. In his book, Rethinking Multiculturalism, he says he gives this concept of dialogic multiculturalism. What does dialogic multiculturalism basically mean? Basically mean that multiculturalism Multiculturalism based on one culture is not possible. What does this mean? It is basically criticism of Kimlicka's liberal theory of multiculturalism, whereby what Kimlicka does, he bases his theory of multiculturalism on liberalism. Right? What Kimlicka does, is that he bases his theory of multiculturalism on liberalism. Liberalism is the umbrella for Kimlicka, and multiculturalism is a part of that. Kimlicka, Kimlicka, what Kimlicka is ethnocentric, and Kimlicka bases his theory of liberalism, his theory of multiculturalism within ambit of liberalism, because for Kimlicka, liberalism is more important, because Kimlicka puts liberalism as more important. Kimlicka is ethnocentric, and Bhikkhu Parekh says that multiculturalism, which is based on one culture, is not possible, which Kimlicka does, and he bases his theory of multiculturalism within liberalism. And he gives his concept of dialogic materialism, whereby he says that culture is not static. Culture is not static. Dialogical materialism is basically saying that within culture, within culture, and with with two cultures, there is dialogic, dialectical, and dialectical exchange. One culture is giving its values to other culture, and there is dialogue between cultures. So what he suggests, that Kimlicka giving more importance to liberalism, because he thinks multiculturalism will kill liberalism, but he says that culture is not bad. Culture is not a burden, but it is source of enrichment. He suggests he suggests that different cultures can have different values. Let's say liberal culture has value of autonomy of self, right? Then Indian culture has value of duty or dharma. Autonomy of self can be somewhat adopted by Indian culture in context of women, that women should be given autonomy of self. Liberal culture can adopt duty or dharma, whereby you see too much individualism, that parents are not meeting, parents are not meeting to their children. There is gap between people. There is declining social capital. So, culture is not a burden. Culture is source of enrichment, and different culture can adopt elements of each other. Right? Against this, against this, Parekh gives his concept of dialogical materialism against liberal, not materialism. I'm extremely sorry. Dialogical multiculturalism against liberal multiculturalism. Right? Against liberal multiculturalism, Parekh gives his concept of dialogical multiculturalism, whereby Kimlicka gives importance to liberalism as well. The liberalism as well. For Parekh, only cultures are important, whereby cultures are very dynamic. Cultures are constantly in dialogue with each other. One culture can learn a lot from other. There is no need to be limited to liberalism only. You see, you see Kimlicka excluding LGBTQ, immigrants, refugee. Parekh suggests include LGBTQ, include refugees, include immigrants, right? That is the idea of dialogical materialism, multiculturalism. Now, against Kimplika's view of liberal theory of multiculturalism, whereby he he keeps liberalism intact, there is Charles Taylor. If you remember Charles Taylor and his book of recognition of self, Charles Taylor's book of recognition of self, whereby he says that, whereby he says that culture is part of one's personality. Without culture, you are no one, which Kimlika suggests. He what he tries to do, what he tries to do is basically give liberalism more important than multiculturalism, which Charles Taylor says that culture is part of one's personality. You cannot make that exclusion. Culture is part of one's personality. Therefore, go for identity-based politics and and address social exclusion. That is the idea of Charles Taylor. Now go back to criticism of identity politics, whereby feminists criticize identity politics because they say cultures subordinate women. Cultures see women as culture carriers. If you have studied socialization in society, right? If you have studied concept of socialization, you know that children are inducted within a society's culture by women. Children are inducted within a society by women. Therefore, feminists criticize multiculturalism because it sees women are as cultural carriers. Then liberals like Brian Berry, he suggests politics of identity should not happen. He says politics of development should happen. Right? Amartya Sen criticizes multiculturalism by saying that it leads to ghettoization. Right? Jeremy Waldron suggests that people are very acceptance. People have acceptance of other cultural norms, but multiculturalism says that it is not so, because Iris Marian give idea of differentiated citizenship. Jeremy Waldron basically want to say people accept cultural norms, but multiculturalism assumes the exact opposite. Feminist feminists see women as culture carriers. Liberals see Liberals say politics of development is more important. Amartya Sen says that multiculturalism leads to ghettoization, and Jeremy Waldron says that people accept multicultural norms, but multiculturalism assumes opposite of it. This was multiculturalism. We are finished with multiculturalism and all the ideas which were related to multiculturalism. I hope this helped. We'll start with human rights, human and ideas with respect to human rights. From the next lecture, we'll try to finish Asian values debate and cultural relativism as well in the next lecture itself. Thank you so much. Bye bye.